This is a tutorial on revising your geometry in the 3D editor in WUFI Passive. In WUFI Passive, oftentimes if you'd like to edit your geometry, it's quicker and easier to re-import your geometry using the SketchUp import or GBXML import, depending on which one you originally imported the geometry in. However, if you're simply making a few changes, you may edit the geometry using the WUFI Passive Building Editor. In order to do this, you can select the 3D Editor under Building 3D Editor, or you can always pop out this geometry screen using this Expand Shrink Window option in the lower left-hand corner. In my geometry screen, the first step I will take is selecting vertices here. On the left hand side, it looks like a little 5 on the dice, and this now makes the red vertices appear in my geometry. I'm doing this so that I can create new vertices relative to the old vertices. That's how most of the new geometry creation will work in WUFI Passive. In this particular example, I will show you how to create a basement 10 feet below the current floor plane here without re-importing geometry. So the first thing I need to do is figure out what the X and Y directions are in my geometry. Okay, so I have to zoom out quite a bit for this. The Y direction is going here, you can see Y. X direction is over on the right hand side, going through the short side of the building, parallel to the long side of the building, and then the Z direction is straight up. You will need to know this if you're going to be creating vertices relative to each other in the X and Y direction. In this case, we will be going directly lower than the bottom vertices to create the basement, so we'll be going in the Z direction. Okay, zooming back in here, the first thing I'm going to do is pick any corner and create a new vertice below it. So I'm going to right-click, New, Copy, Move Vertices, and I'm going to go in the negative Z direction 10 feet, and I'm going to create one vertice. I'm going to copy that exact placement for all of the different corners. So again, I picked a different vertice, right-click, New, Copy, Move, selected the Z direction, and I'm going negative Z. Positive Z was up, negative Z is down, 10 feet. This is the vector direction in feet, and I would like one of them, and I will say OK. Now I need to rotate. You rotate using the different icons on the left-hand side. If you right-hand click, it goes one direction. If you left click, it goes the other direction. Okay, so now I'll go to the other side, pick these bottom vertices, New, Copy, Move, negative 10 feet in the Z direction, and then again for this bottom vertice. Okay, so now I have these 4 vertices floating on the plane below. The next move will be to create the basement walls. So I'll need to do this by selecting the different vertices in a clockwise motion. If you select them in a counterclockwise motion, it will make the wall face one direction versus the other. You can always change the orientation once the wall is created. So if I select them in a clockwise direction, I believe it should make the wall face the correct direction, and if not, we will change the orientation. So I will do this by selecting one vertice, holding Control, and selecting the next in the clockwise direction, then the next vertice, and then the final. Once I have all 4 vertices selected, I right-click, Make Component of Selected Vertices. It's the bottom option I will select. It will select Opaque. The interior side should be Zone 1 if you're creating a basement, outer side, outer air. These should be familiar from the SketchUp import or from the different settings you see for the different components. Set the default color, and I will say OK. So now I have a wall. You can see that it's slightly different colored from the wall above it. This means that it's facing a different way. So you can kind of see below here the arrow's facing inside. So what I need to do now is right-click on this wall, change my orientation, inner, outer, and now the arrow is facing outward and it's the same color as the walls above it. So the color is a slight indicator of what way the wall is facing. Again, when it was facing inside, it was whiter, like this, and I just simply changed the orientation, and now it's the yellower color, and the green arrow is facing outward, which is what I'd like. This is the green arrow that indicates what the outer side is here. So interior side is where the arrow starts, this green arrow. Outer side is where the arrow faces. So we'd like the arrow to be facing the outer air side. I'm going to do the exact same procedure, except this time I can do counterclockwise, knowing that I had the wall orientation flipped that time. Make the component, and now see my wall is facing outward. Again, I'm just selecting the vertices, selecting one vertice, pressing Control, and selecting all of them in a counterclockwise motion. Third wall, and I'm rotating using the scroll on my mouse because the Z direction is selected. If I was in the Y direction, the scroll would rotate in the other direction. So counterclockwise using Control, make component. Okay, these are all opaque, and now I have basement walls here. Lastly, I need to create a floor. So I will select one vertice, 2, 3, 4, make component, select OK, and now I have a floor here. What I need to make sure of is now the outer side should now be connected to ground. I will say OK, so now I have ground and my green arrow is facing outward. Indeed, here it is. One thing to be aware of if you are going to make changes like this in your geometry, we now have a plane here below the main building that thinks it is connected to the ground because that's the original slab. So if I were to pick here, you can see now this slab below now thinks the outer side is still ground, but the outer side is actually the basement now. So what I would do is I would find this original piece of geometry. It's about 1,100 square feet here. It says that the outer side is ground. You need to change this now to the outer side being zone 1 because it is now exposed to the interior conditions rather than ground. And you have a new slab on grade, actually sorry, a basement floor here. And you can now name this basement floor. So again, if you did not change the slab on grade here, it would think that you had two different ground connections, one at the slab level, or one at grade, and one at the bottom of the basement. You can kind of see, indicated by these little component icons, that now this slab on grade is really an interior floor, and the red line is indicating the component, or the thermal boundary, and it's showing that this has interior air or conditioned space on both sides, whereas this basement floor now only has the thermal boundary at the bottom. These vertices can be used to create different walls extending in the X and Y directions as well. You will have to then create windows on the new walls you create. There's a separate tutorial on that.